All right, everything you need to know about drums in one video. I wish I would have had this video years ago. And most of the tips I'm gonna show you today will work for any genre, so let's get into it. All right, so first let's talk the placement of each of your different drums. So first up, we have the snare or the clap. Technically, you can use other drums here. These are just the most common. And what you'll see in most music is the drum will be placed either right here. Like really common in like electronic music. But the one I want to cover is even more common, and that's just placing it right here. And you'll hear that in hip hop beats, electronic beats, pop beats, R&B beats, etc. Then if we move on to our kick, which is gonna be the loudest drum and really like the heartbeat of your beats, along with the 808. You're gonna always want it starting right at the beginning, like 100% of the time. But you can be a little bit more creative on where you place the other ones. So we'll start with this one right here. And then pockets like right here typically work pretty well. Right over here or right over here sounds pretty good. Really, it kind of depends on what you want to do. So let's just put something down really quickly. Something like that's fine. And for your kick, pretty much always gonna wanna go in here, just click Control A. Use your scroll on your mouse. That way they hit harder. Next, we have a percussion instrument. So this could be something like a bongo drum or just literally just a random sound. And for those, best places in my opinion is just these thirds right here. That's really a great spot. And if we wanna go right here, and if you like the sounds I'm using here today, these are all from my new drum kit demo, which you get a free version in the description. But yeah, you'll be seeing me use it pretty much all the time. All right, next, if we take something like an open hat, which I have right here, some good places to put those. And again, you can kind of do this with any of the drums you want. Could be a sound effect here as well, or maybe like a tom drum or something. I like to put them kind of at the start. It kind of resets the loop almost. Some other places you can put them as like right here. Just kind of have fun with it, really. Now we have our hi-hats, which you might have seen videos of people doing like really crazy stuff with their hi-hats, which you definitely can do. But I typically always keep mine very simple, partly because I'm lazy, honestly. So take this hi-hat right here. And typically what I'll do with my hi-hats is just go right click and fill every 2-step. But you have a few options with your hi-hats. You could literally keep it like this if you wanted. If you do this, I just recommend varying up the velocities a little bit. So maybe something like this. That adds like a lot more bounce. But you can also go in and actually take out some of the hi-hats. Let's just go take this out. Just that one note like made a pretty big difference. You can even do a couple more. Another thing that can add some more bounce with your hi-hats is if you see these other notes where like the kick's hitting or these other drums, if you just take them out in those spots, it can make those other drums kind of stick out a little bit more and add some bounce. So just a cool little simple thing you can do. Now, another thing you can do, I typically like to use the 1/3 step. I feel like it adds the most bounce. So you just go up to this little magnet tool right here, click 1/3 step, just click on one of these right here. You can just add some rolls. And where they typically sound best is kind of close to the snare, so like after it, maybe a little bit before, or maybe in between some of your percussions. And let's also play with these velocities a little bit. Now that's kind of redundant, and so just with my drums in general, like every 4 bars or typically every like 8 bars, I'll have like some slight change towards the end, and that could be something as simple as just adding an additional roll. I just wanted to keep it as simple as possible just to kind of show you guys the impact your drums can actually have on your beat. So, all right, so next up we have 808s. For most people, this is their favorite drum. And so there's 3 things you have to do before you even start laying down your 808s. Step number 1, make sure it's tuned to C. How do you know if it's tuned to C? Just right click right here, edits and pitch corrector, and boom, it's C, so we're good. Now, if this said E, then all you would need to do is go to this right here, just go in and find an E, and then you should be good. Step number 2, go in and make sure it's set to cut itself. If you don't have it set to cut itself, then this is gonna happen. Versus if it was set to cut itself. See how it's not like running into itself? And the last thing you wanna do, we have 2 other instruments in this beat. All you need to do is go to Fruity Parametric EQ and cut out about 200 Hertz. So, and that's because that's where the 808 sits. So you have a lot more space in your beat if you get rid of that. And now we can finally add our 808s. Typically how I like to do it is if I have chords, boom, I'm just gonna do something like this. Just kind of lay out where I want my 808s. Basically, if you're using chords, you just want to go to the bottom notes or whatever the root note is. And then from here, because the bounce isn't going to sound that good. Then I'll kind of listen through and move things around. Usually it sounds pretty good if you move these over here. Another thing that I could have done here is just copy over the kick pattern and have it go on all the same spots as the kick. I just like to do this because I think you get a little bit more bounce when only some of the kick and the 808s are hitting on the same spot. So something like this is fine. And one thing I like to do that just sounds cool and adds some bounce is I'll take some of the shorter notes and then pitch them up an octave, and you just hold down Control and then press up to do that. Maybe we'll leave this one down here. Overall, you kind of just got to play around with it, and don't be afraid to listen to a song and kind of copy like a similar bounce. You'll notice that a lot of the popular music has very similar kind of drum bounce and rhythms. And I am gonna do a video on drum patterns, so make sure you're subscribed if you're interested in that. All right, so now you know most of the basics. I'm gonna get into mixing a bit later, which is very crucial, but I wanna show you some of the cool stuff now. First thing I wanna show you is going off the 808s, and this is a trick I love to do. And all you need to do is clone your 808, so let's clone this one right here. Click on it, and then click reverse. Then you wanna go to this wrench tool right here. So this is cut by 1. Also wanna make sure the other 808 you're using is also cut by 1. And then if we look at this pattern right here, this might sound cool right here on this C5. So let's delete that C5 right there, and then just go right here and put this on the C5. I actually went in and changed this to a bit more subby 808s because I think it'll sound cooler. And then I'm just gonna actually push this up an octave as well so you can really hear the effect. So it kind of just gives you a cool effect right there. Next thing that you can do that's a lot more simple for your percussions, you can go in, you can do this for any drum sound really. Probably wouldn't do this with your snare or your kick though, as I typically like those more in the center of the beat. If you just go right here and pan your notes, you can push this one over to the right ear and then this one to the left. And I'm just using my scroll bar and just listen to how it kind of sounds in both ears. Next thing you can do is actually layer your drums. So one thing you can do that's really easy is just grab another hi-hat. And for example, you can do something as simple as just fill each 4-step instead. This will add some additional bounce. So you can also do that for your snare. And for a lot of these sounds from the kit, I actually used an actual drum set. Yeah, you can do stuff like this where just have it on one or the other. So this snare is gonna hit harder. Really overall with your drums, just try a bunch of different stuff. All right, so now on to really the mixing essentials for your drums. This is what's going to make them cut through the mix. So overall make your beats sound good. So these are the kind of bare minimum things that you have to do. First thing that I would say makes this easiest is using good quality drum sounds. Buy my kit. But all right, first thing you wanna do is center your kick or put it in mono. 808s, what I typically like to do is I like to go in and cut about 20 Hertz as those frequencies are really low. And so it kind of just takes a bit of the energy away from your 808s. So before, after. Next thing I would say to keep in mind is kick, 808, loudest part of your beat. For my other drums, snare, I usually have that in the center or maybe slightly offset just like a little bit. Now for my perks, because we already panned this one right here, you don't have to do anything there. But otherwise, I'll typically pan those maybe a little bit more over here, especially for something like an open hat or a hi-hat. And then on my master, I personally just use a fruity soft clipper. You can also use a limiter as well, or kind of combine the two. But yeah, this is the video I would recommend watching next. See you soon. Peace.